Welcome, everyone, to Recollection Step, a Grand Archive TCG podcast, part of the Maindeck podcast family. I'm Dan.
And I'm Taylor. Today, our topic is going to be the Auckland metagame at the Ascent event there, and also just the general Fractured Crown metagame. Before we get into that, though, what have you been up to, Dan?
Well, if our Grand Archive audience was paying attention, we had a big Weebs of the Shore live stream just, last night as we're recording this, last week, I guess, as this is being posted. And I'm just recovering from that. I was up late streaming with everyone. It was, boy, were you watching that stream, Taylor? That was wild.
Yeah, I watched like pretty much all of it. That was insane. There were so many cool cards spoiled.
Yeah, I was on the floor at the end of that. I mean, like I didn't have any like special information or anything. They didn't show us the cards they were going to preview ahead of time, even the ones that we were looking at. And they just said, "Hey, be here at this time." And Dan, you're going to be with Red Zone Rogue, and you two are going to look at a spoiler and stuff. So it was crazy. We got to see Arasana, the cleric abilities. We got to see the Tenoris' obelisks. We got to see Diana's creeping torment, what all that stuff does. Oh,
yeah, it was insane. I know a lot of people are very excited about Diana. They've been very hyped up about creeping torment as they've seen it. But the idea of just like Tenoris just walking around with these giant obelisks and smashing people with them is insane. It's very good. It's top tier.
I liked that we had a little bit of Timmy and a little bit of Timmy being the psychographic profile defined by some Magic the Gathering people a million years ago. A little bit of that means someone who likes big numbers, big damage, big dudes, big smash. Tenoris, right up your alley, which I think is awesome. Or I think I keep saying Tenoris. I think it's Tenoris, right?
Tenoris.
I don't know. I checked with Syl at one point and I already forgot.
It's not. I remember Tenoris last night, but you know what? We'll say Tenoris just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
And then next time we'll go to like Tenoris or something.
Yeah, we'll say it different every single time. That's perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. Yep. Mm-hmm. And we had the Johnny profile, the people who like kind of like combo-y stuff with like cleric, right up your alley from what we finally saw. Star calling, I can't even believe that mechanic. That's so wild.
Star calling looks to be very powerful potentially. It gets definitely into like the more spikier Johnny kind of builds for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right. Like Spike the sort of the tournament player like mentality is the person who generally likes to eke value out of every possible opportunity because they're interested in just what's the most efficient way to win the game. And yeah, I mean, like already churning on ideas with using Arasana level 3's ability to make your star calling cost 0 once per turn, which is just like wild. If like, okay, not to get too far, we got plenty to talk about, but not to get too far into this idle speculation, but the idea of being able to stack a deck with a high number of Astra cards, a lot like Rai does with Crux cards right now, and then just get to level 3. You don't explode right away, but instead it's like every single turn, almost guaranteed to find an Astra card with Star Calling or something. So you go, okay, I got to level 3, scry the skies, play this for free, draw a card into memory, pass the turn, Fairy Whispers, play this for free, reveal the top, and whoops, I guess it was randomly a win card. Cool, I get that too, or something, like that's exciting. Very exciting.
Definitely. Very much so. And then Diana, a lot of cool stuff going on there too. Very, has a lot more going on than I initially thought. Like Creeping Torment is just kind of seems to be a small part of her Umbra kit. They spoiled a new weapon for her. I forget what it was called already, but it's a new gun.
Shadow's Twin.
Shadow's Twin. like doubles all the on hit effects when you hit champions with it.
I love seeing that. I'm this type of Timmy gamer where it's like when I see stuff that's like, when this would happen, do it twice. I go, oh man, like there's going to be some crazy stuff you can do with this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and lots of new bullets shown off that have awesome on hit effects as well. So we're gonna have a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 episodes from now, depending on when spoilers come out. But I think we'll wait and hold off on the rest of this until we have the full picture at this point, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, for sure. And it was, I think, we just want to get, I think, a few more cards to really start to understand these kits, because it's just so tough to talk about advanced element stuff without having enough context. It was kind of like when we skipped Cleric in the last episode, because like this context would have been needed to really address like what she's doing, I think. And still, I'm not sure we have what we're looking for. Aside from that, though, the stream was a ton of fun. We got to play some games. I was very excited to be able to earn a whole bunch of giveaway mats that got sent out to the community. I was so glad that Red Zone Rogue was my ally in our trivia contest, because they asked about a 1986 movie with this cast, and I was like, I literally only watched Star Wars when I was a kid. Like, that's the only thing I watched. So I knew it wasn't Star Wars.
I was also really happy he was your teammate, because I was yelling Highlander at the screen, but unfortunately you could not hear me from across town.
Yeah, nope, couldn't quite. I thought I heard maybe a little something. Like, must have been the wind. So, okay, yeah. So you're right, though. We should let's move on. Let's get to our main topic. Before we go there, though, I do have to do what I'm kind of the usual thing we're doing now. I'm going to mention 2 things. Basically, for our listeners out there, if you enjoy this podcast, if you enjoy listening to us, and you do want to support us in any way you can, there are some wonderful ways that you can support. First of all, if you just like the episode, you can, of course, go ahead and like it down on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, all that kind of stuff. We're actually now up on Spotify and iTunes. I've got that all done. So these episodes will be going up there. If you prefer to listen to them on Spotify and iTunes, by all means, head over there, follow the show there, and you'll get the episodes as soon as they go live. Both those systems do have ways to rate the show as well. So you can go ahead and pop a little 5-star rating or whatever on the show if you do like it, because that does help us kind of get discovered as well. So that is one of the easiest, cheapest things you can do to support us if you do enjoy this content. But then the other thing you can do to support us financially at no cost to you, well, no additional cost to you, it does cost something, is we do have our TCG Player affiliate link, which is going to be down in the description or in the show notes of the show. And that is also, you can also just go to our bit.ly version, bit.ly/shop TCGs. That's bit.ly/shop TCGs. And that will bring you up to our affiliate page. Then you can go ahead and buy any cards you want to buy on TCG Player for any game. Doesn't matter. There's no additional cost to you, but we do get a small kickback for that. So if you are someone who typically uses TCG Player, you can bookmark that link and then you can just access that. It doesn't change anything you're doing, except we're going to get a little kickback from your shopping, which helps us grow and expand our content and our reach and all that kind of stuff. So really do appreciate any support you provide, though. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show and the channel. Now, Taylor, why don't you lead us in here, because I think you're the mastermind behind this. So you've got all the ideas. How are we tackling this topic of the FTC metagame and the Ascent Auckland recap?
Well, let's start just kind of like, let's do a quick overview of kind of what happened at Houston. Cause that kind of like was the boom for all of it. We saw I think we saw some regionals and some store champs right away once it launched, if I remember correctly. I mean, that was right on the border there of like, DOA was wrapping up. FTC was just kicking off. And
we had like one online Fractured Crown tournament that happened. There were, I'm not even sure if some of these Yeti ones might have actually still been set 1. I think, I'm not sure we had very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Houston was pretty fresh as far as big events went for FTC for sure.
No, there were a couple. I want to just to make sure our numbers are right. The Yeti Gaming Weekly here we had like 2 or 3 tournaments that went up on Luxera's map. By the way, awesome tournament resource if you want to follow Grand Archive competitively. We've got that. That's linked in like every Grand Archive video we do. It's right down there. So go check that out if you don't use it already.
But yeah, Houston was a lot of fire allies, a lot of fire Merlin,
Yeah.
And Wind Allies was kind of a breakout deck at that tournament as well. But I think going into it, everybody thought fire was just going to be extremely dominant. And it was very powerful. It was very prevalent. A lot of people were playing fire, but definitely was shown to not be like the biggest dog in the room necessarily. Like there's other decks that can compete currently.
Houston was very much fire and wind. I mean, the top 8 was half and half fire and wind decks. One Rye, a couple Merlin, one Lorraine for the fire decks, and then all 3 True Champion Gaming, all 3 wind Lorraine decks, and then one wind Merlin, one wind Limelight's wind Merlin.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And water just nowhere, because I don't know, like I think there were a couple water in top 32. I had the pleasure of actually playing Valkyrie Loaf, another content creator who's playing a really cool water. I think they were water Lorraine. I think it was water Lorraine. Is he Lorraine or Merlin?
There was a water Lorraine list that was floating around for sure.
Yeah, I think it was Lorraine. I think it wasn't like, I think the big thing that happened from this though is that True Champion Gaming ally list came out, and it kind of showed everybody like, here's the ally deck. Mm-hmm. And then people were able to start porting that more successfully into water, especially with the addition of Proxy's Vault, Scepter of Lumina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah. Scepter of Lumina, very powerful. I had been playing a lot of Water Merlin before Houston. That's kind of what I was drawn to. And leading up to the event, I just didn't think it was going to be powerful enough. It does a lot of really cool things, but it doesn't necessarily go over the top of anybody as well as like something like Fire Merlin. And then, of course, once you came out with the triple threat list, like that was just huge. You know, that was kind of what we all pivoted to, and it took me by storm for sure. Like I fell in love with that deck pretty quick after I decided to give it a try. So
the triple threat hybrid deck, specifically when Avarice was legal. I mean, serious. I appreciate all the kind words. I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but like, I was a serious underrated competitor in the metagame that had game against basically everything. There's nothing you were cold dead to. Rye was your worst matchup, but Rise was fairly underplayed. I think, especially at Houston, there were not many entries. The one Rye I faced all day was Michael Yap, who we'll talk about in a little bit, who dominated me round 1 and put me on course to bubble out because of that. Yeah, like that. The thing is, with water being as underplayed as it was, the water had this probably the strongest lantern plays for sure to try and shut down Rhapsody, but that wasn't as big a deal because in that version of triple threat, you just went to level 3, you drew 1 million cards, and you couldn't lose the game easily at that point.
Yep.
With Avarice banned now, I think that has opened up the door for that list to get controlled too hard by water now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit actually, because it kind of goes into our store championships pretty well.
Yeah.
Because I think, we just played a ton of fire at store champs for us. I was at JWW, friend of the stream, sponsor of the stream. And there was like about 8 of us or so, I think, and so many fire decks. Like
it was 7, and we had 6 fire decks and 1 wind.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
It was unfortunately like a little smaller than our normal player base, and a number of people who just couldn't make it for one reason or another. And I think that's just kind of where right now with the player base Grand Archive has, that's where most store champs are kind of hitting. Like if you're generally probably hitting somewhere in the 6 to 16 range, depending on like quite how big your city is or how popular, or how well it lines up with people's schedules or whatever. I know in like the Cali region, they're probably all a bit bigger, but they also have 1 million store champs. I was listening to Talk GA, the podcast that Foamy and Ava and Mark from Solar Games do. And they were mentioning how every single weekend it was like store champs, regional store champs up there. For us, this was the one store champs. And if it just didn't work out in your schedule, you didn't get to go to store champs, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. That happened to like at least like 2 or 3 people, I think, in the area, unfortunately. But so you had taken an iteration of Triple Threat. I had taken an iteration of Triple Threat. Mitch had taken an iteration of Triple Threat, and we had all gone in like slightly different directions.
Yeah, all 3 different iterations of Triple Threat, which is fun.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then let's see, there was a Fire Rye, a Fire Xander. I forget what the last fire deck was, but just so much fire. I feel bad because I've been saying like you don't have to play fire in this metagame at all, and then we just show up with like all fire, only fire.
Well, you were about to show up with water, Lorraine. You just about took it, and if you had taken it, you might have taken the title.
Yeah,
I think there's a reasonable shot at that.
Yeah, I think so as well. It was just a coward move not to do it, though. I should have just trusted my gut and gone for it. But Triple Threat's fun to play too. It's great. It's fun to like just dunk Rhapsodies. So
yeah, the version I was playing, and I was the one who won the event. The version I was playing, so I did the whole deck profile, and if you missed it, you can go check that out. But I mean, it's just it doesn't go to level 3 as much as it focuses on just trying to kill you as quick as possible with Erupting Rhapsody, purely just relying on the fact that fire can draw 1 million cards, and Rye level 1 is quite potent when you've drawn 1 million cards. It doesn't really matter. I think I went to level 3 maybe once the whole tournament, like one game. Like I'm pretty sure I only went to level 3 one time. It was against the Wind Ally deck, and I needed some health. I just needed like a buffer. I wasn't stringing together what I needed. Against aggressive decks with any variant of Triple Threat, you're supposed to go more control. If you can't outrace them, which you often can't, you need to actually start just spending cards to deal with the board to attrition them out. And that's where that Merlin level 3 comes in and restocks your ability to control things, gives you a little bit of extra time. Now, what was your variant that you were playing? You want to go over that?
Yeah. Let's see. Mine was still like just kind of the straight to Lorraine to Merlin level 3. A little bit of Crux, Ghost of Pendragon in there to kind of help you refuel once you get there and set up a turn. And I think I had really biased my deck a lot more towards the aggro matchup in general and the ally matchup in general. Like having the Ghost in there, like you get to go to level 3, play Ghost, you refuel your hand, and then next turn they're probably not going to kill you because you've dealt with their board, and then you just get to Rhapsody them after the fact, or hit them with a couple fireballs or whatever. Like you just have very smooth sailing because you're going to have a constant flow of cards. It might not be a huge burst like you had with Avarice beforehand, but you just have the game locked up.
Now you weren't playing Incarnate Majesty though, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Right.
Yes.
So that was the big difference with Mitch's build, who he brought in Incarnate Majesty. He just said, okay, look, I'm just going to go to the long game. I'm just going to go there. You can't kill me, and I will Rhapsody you eventually. It doesn't matter what your defenses are like. I will stop you.
Yep. And it was really good in the Merlin mirror.
Yeah.
Like Incarnate Majesty buys you a ton of time since people aren't just like exploding with Avarice anymore. And whoever gets to like level 2 first is just they're at a huge advantage because they get to control the flow of the game a little bit more. So his deck was playing 4 dungeon guides, and I was only playing 2. I don't know if you were playing any at all.
I played 0.
But we'll get to that because I think there's still a pretty good innovation there. So he was set up a lot better for like the Merlin mirrors for sure. And that bore out. I played him in the last round and then again in the first round of top 4 and lost to him both matches. A lot because of Incarnate Majesty.
Yep. Yeah, I think that Incarnate, like you said, that's kind of the tech to deal with it just puts fireballs fairly out of range. The advantage is that like at least the erupting version, the triple threat version of the Merlin decks can just erupting. Actually, if you've been able to like put enough pressure on them, which sometimes happens, you can actually still just go face with Erupting Rhapsody because it doesn't target. It's not a spell. So the Spell Shroud from Majestic Spirit doesn't actually do anything, but he still has the damage. But you can also Erupting Rhapsody the Spirit and direct the rest at face. He'll still half the damage on face while he's in play, and then he'll die. Is how that interaction works for anyone who was curious about the specifics of that. So, but I just think that I think the erupting one does have a little bit more game against Majestic Spirit, but still, if you're like, I thought it was kind of interesting. I felt like we had maybe sort of a rock, paper, scissors between just our three decks where like I could go fast enough and I didn't care about ally hate. So like I had a little bit of an edge on you. I was also the one playing Rye level 1 and you two were playing Lorraine level 1.
Yes.
Which I think we'll talk about in just a second.
Yep.
But then, Mitch could kind of stop me and you, well, actually, I'm not sure what direction it goes into, but
I think I was in a rough spot regardless.
Yeah, maybe that's right. I think actually it's rock, scissors.
Yep. It was, you guys had a really good finals match. That's for sure. Yeah. And I think it was going to be tough for me regardless.
Yeah. It was just cool to see all that, all these, like the ideas that we all kind of separately had about how we should tackle this. I think we were being a little bit more coy. Like usually we communicate a lot about what we're building, but like right that week kind of leading up to Store Champs, you kind of like got a little information out of me the night before where I was like, all right, I'll like tell you a little bit, but I think we were all just being a little coy because we're like, like want to keep a little bit of tech there so I could try and snag that title.
Yeah, we're all pretty competitive. We were all really excited to hit a shot at that. So that playmat is super cool, and having the championship swag to throw around the locals is always fun.
Yeah.
And so moving on from that tournament, like I think talking about how we would innovate on the triple threat list moving forward. I think we're kind of coming full circle where we want to go more hybrid again. But instead of at Houston where we had both Lorraine level 3 and Merlin level 3 in the material deck, my idea now is to move to Lorraine level 1 and also Rye level 1 in the material deck, depending more on what that matchup requires. Because Lorraine is really good into the ally matchups still. Getting the free sword and just being able to kind of get that extra health buffer right away lets you control the board a little bit more. Rye gets to do that as well. But the big advantage for Rye is that in these like Merlin mirrors where like you're worried about getting to Merlin level 2 first, he gives you a pretty big out if you can't get to Merlin level 2. Turning on your mage class bonuses earlier is pretty big game and lets you kind of get the additional damage you need to get a smaller Rhapsody off and still win.
I think another small advantage is that Lorraine's sword, it gives you 2 damage sort of seeking like over time, which isn't nothing. And against the allies, like you're saying, that's where it's like really impactful because you really don't want to be spending cards from your hand if possible to try to have to deal with allies on the board. You'd like to conserve as many cards as possible. But if all you're doing is, like it's a Rye deck, so you're like, well, everything I do just goes to face. Like I don't have to target your allies ever because you only ever have Dungeon Guide. In those cases, what you really want is to try and get the win faster than them. Like going to level 3 Merlin is like, it's like they're dragging you down to their level and beating you with experience. Is kind of like, right. You're going to have a tough time beating Rye level 3 when you're just trying to go to Merlin level 3, because once he's at level 3, he's like, hey, I still get to play degenerate stuff and draw a million cards. And you like can do a big attack and that's kind of it. And it just and everything has to line up for that. Whereas if you can just stay at level 1 and draw cards, and that's where like you get to play now Jewel of Enlightenment in your material deck, which then allows you to just have an extra Grand Crusader's Ring. So instead of spending those turns losing cards to go up levels, you're spending those turns drawing 2 cards per turn instead, plus whatever else you're drawing. That can give you a huge, huge tempo advantage against Rye to the point where you can pull off the erupting wins before he gets to 3, before he has Spell Shield Arcane online. And the other thing I like about this Rye version is that, and this is tricky because we're talking theoretically about how to build the deck, but we don't have a 60 card list exactly for this hybrid thing. And one thing I liked about my version was that I got to run the 4 Ignite the Soul in the main. Ignite the Soul, great floating memory, great pitch, something you want to pitch to Creative Shock whenever you can. By playing, you can still play it in either build, but you only get that floating memory on level 1 for when you do on a level. And again, that's not as important if you're just trying to stay at level 1. So not a big deal, but it's really nice just to I think that's going to be a card you might want to put in the build either way, because against that Rydek, when they do get that quick dungeon guide up, they get to level 3. It is the cheapest way to break a spell shield arcane and still kill them, because spell shield's the thing that like a lot of tech does not stop Erupting Rhapsody from you winning the game.
Yep.
Spell shield straight loses you the game if you don't have to target him with it if there's something else to target. But there has to be something else to target is the key. So if there's nothing in play, no allies, nothing like that, you go to Erupting and they go spell shield, you go, whoops, banish nothing and take 5, and they get a bunch of enlightened counters. That's still like too much. And you'll probably lose the next turn.
Yes. Also, your list didn't have any Crux in it either. So like just the Rye level one helped a lot. Whereas I think if you've got the Crux, like that's really also where you want Lorraine and the sword. Because you're probably playing Ghost of Pendragon at that point. So depending on how much Crux you want to play in your main deck too is going to determine whether you want to play both Lorraine and Rye or just one or the other.
I think something about that is it's hard to quantify difference between the decks, but it plays out in a very tangible fashion. It certainly did during the finals match against Mitch. But those, he was playing, his was basically the more traditional, at this point, traditional in this part of the metagame, Merlin with the prismatic edge, and then just a small, like, I don't even know if he ran 2 copies of the off element cards.
I think he might have had 2 of one and 1 of the other.
Yeah, it was a pretty small amount. He didn't see him too often, but his deck had 3 cards that didn't do anything, and then his deck had 8, 11, I don't know, somewhere like maybe 11 Crux cards, maybe around there. I'm just trying to think of. I think he ran Sight, Majesty, Ascension. I think he might have run those 3.
Yes.
So he definitely had hands where he had some clunk. He was drawing these hands. They're like, I don't have a lot of play options. Every deck can get a little clunky, especially these triple threat ones have a bunch of win cons. And I definitely, I had one game where this is too many win cons. I just, I can't win because I can't get any card velocity. But that last game, came down, of course, game 3. It came down to me having the room in my board because I didn't have to run swords and stuff. I had room in my material deck for Orb of Regret. And I orbed out all 3 fiery momentums for some cards, and he didn't have any recourse. Mitch just had he had half a hand, and I got to take a turn to turn my hand into something that worked. Draw, won me the game.
Yep.
And there's an advantage. There's a distinct advantage to not having advanced element cards in there, just by virtue of having a hand that has more playable lines, more routes you can kind of go down, and also then just sometimes having a little extra room in the material deck for your orb.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I think we could wax poetic about this deck for
this is the Triple Threat
hours.
podcast,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Just talk about reversions.
Yep. But I think we've kind of gotten to the point here where we've seen the meta game like kind of solidify up to this point. A lot of fire, a lot of wind. Like both, there's a lot of variants of each element. That you're probably playing a Lorraine or Rye or Merlin, but that's still a lot going on. But let's get into Auckland here and talk about the results there, because in my opinion, that kind of blows a lot of what we thought we knew about the metagame wide open.
I agree.
Like it first of all, True Champion Gaming again just came in and just dominated the event, like just insane, back-to-back performance, like very cool. Again, coming in with a very innovative deck list that I don't think as many people were prepared for or was really expecting at all. I
can't wait to talk about this. It's a small dash of spice, but that dash of spice is a huge impact. And it's no doubt at this point that True Champion Gaming are some of the best players in the game. Like, period.
100%.
They're the ones you see those guys round 1, you go, damn it.
Yep. You're hoping for some lucky breaks at that point, for sure. Yes. But let's jump into the top 8 and just kind of talk about, and the top 32, and talk about kind of how the decks that showed up and how they did. So top 8 was 3 different Water Lorraine lists. a Wind Lorraine Allies list, a Fire Lorraine Ensoul list, Wind Rye list, a Fire Merlin list, and then one more Fire Merlin list that won the whole thing. Michael Yap,
Fire Hybrid.
Fire Hybrid. Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Michael Yap winning it with Fire Hybrid, which is, Fire Merlin, also playing Lorraine level 2 and 3 Spirit Ruler, for a little bit more flexibility. And already, this is more water than we've seen in the metagame ever. It's very cool to see. The rest of the top 32 was also very diverse. Like, there's 10 different archetypes here. Beyond what was in the top 8, we've got a Fire Xander Allies, which is really cool. We got a Wind Merlin, or I said Wind Merlin already, a Wind Rye, excuse me. Water Merlin, some more Fire Ryes. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, the breakdown in the top 8 was like almost a perfect like triad of elements.
Mm-hmm.
Could definitely, it'd be nice to see Sylvie break in, but I'm not sure if I don't know if the Proxy's Vault card that she got was quite enough. There's people saying that she's got some power, but we're not seeing it here. It could be that people haven't quite figured out the combo with it yet, but I like, if I had to gun to my head, have to like Diana's gun to my head, I have to go ahead and just state an opinion. I feel like Tamer is still like you have to try too hard.
Mm-hmm.
You have to jump too many hurdles to get what other decks are getting. And I don't feel like a Terra Proxy's Vault card is solving it, when really she needs something to play in the early games that in the early game that just deals with having too many pride things to jump through or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this top 8, this top 32 really showcases how strong Scepter of Lumina is.
Yes.
So maybe we'll see some like Sylvie builds build off of that, because there's a ton of power there to tap into that Sylvie can really take advantage of. Like, Mitch has been playing a water Sylvie list at locals a bit as well. That's got a lot of potential, I think. A lot of different routes you can take with that. So like, I think, players put some more time into it, you could definitely see some brews come out and just take the events by storm, just like True Champion Gaming did here again. So
yeah, I'd love to see it. I definitely would. Xander too needs. It was Xander. They revealed at Auckland. Mm-hmm. Xander's got a level 2 coming in Proxy's Vault, and that could flip everything on its head depending on what it does. Like
mm-hmm.
Xander is just so on the edge of being an effective champion.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he just needs the smallest little push. The level 3 builds need to just get to level 3 with like 1 or 2 more cards in hand. Is like, yes. That's what if they do that, then it's like these ally decks go, I can't beat you if you get to level 3. I like literally can't win.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that just introduces a wedge into everything that's been building in the metagame.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. So we've talked about it a lot. Do you want to talk about the True Champion list first, or should we talk about the winning hybrid list?
I want to talk about Yap's winning list first. I want to talk about that. Yes. Because you know what? I don't think we've talked about Fire Merlin decks enough. Like, honestly, could I do a podcast entirely about Fire Merlin for the next 2 years? I think so.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was really close to just trying to convince you to talk about it only today, but there's so much other cool stuff going on.
I know there is a lot to talk about. The big thing that's going on with this list, so I don't know how much went into this from our Houston performance or whatever, but I did get a message from Limelight shortly after the conclusion of Auckland saying something to the effect of Yap just won with a hybrid list like yours from Houston or whatever. Mm-hmm. Which I was very excited by, because I knew we were on to something. Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't an erupting list, right? And that makes sense, because erupting is erupting is a higher risk, high reward strategy when it has very, very strict counterplay. And it has counterplay to the counterplay, unless it gets fracturized. Then it goes, we're going to just go late. And thing is, it always has some amount of game, but what Yap's list is a list that has Similarly, it's always got game because it's just doing the traditional Fire Merlin thing of just, how long can your opponent live with a deer in play? Like, not often, like a crazy amount of time with 4 fireballs in the deck, a deer in play, and then ghosts of Pendragon and stuff to beat down with. However, he took the side of the tech that we were using that he used is, or actually he moved it to the main board. So we ran flame sweeps in the side at Houston. He ran 3 flame sweeps in the main. That right there, that alone,
that's huge.
That was the decision. I think to go hybrid with flame sweeps in there. Now he's running full hybrid. So it's Spirit of Fire, Lorraine level 1, and then Merlin 2, Lorraine 2, Merlin 3, Lorraine 3 Spirit Ruler version. And that allows him to, when the opponent sits down and they put allies on the board, he goes, okay, easy game. I go to Lorraine 2, I flame sweep the board, I draw 3 cards off of that, and have done some damage to their face. I level to 3, I sudden steal them. Like fire. All you do what we did. You just transition. You go, okay, in this game, I don't need fireballs. Fireballs are chaff. I just put my fireballs down to pay for costs, and then I'm just going straight into Ghost of Pendragon, sudden steal. Incarnates become generally chaff. I think there's like a line where maybe
there's some slim lines. I mean, like Crystal of Empowerment's still in there, right? So you get to level 3, you play Crystal. Your Majesty's cost 7 now, which is a lot at that point in the game. But with Pendragons, with Cruxites getting Pendragons back, there's certainly like room to play it somewhere.
You got to be careful because Incarnate Majesty's efficiency is class bonus. So
yes. Yep.
Yeah, so you don't get the level reduction. So you have to pay a lot to play it on Spirit Ruler.
Yeah,
you get the sword reduction.
Yeah,
but
you only run 2 swords. So
he is running he's only running 2. He's got the drawn blade in there. So like what you get to do is like it's just kind of like the old Ferrari like infusion play line where you sweep the board, put out drawn blade, use the drawn blade in whatever order you need to do it. You do those 2 things, then go to Spirit Ruler, get the drawn blade back. And that's sort of just like gives you that card advantage momentum where you can just go ahead and find the kill at some point, find the ghost the drawn blade, play the drawn blade again, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You grind them out very, very effectively at that point. It's tough for ally decks to come back at that point when you can chain Ghosts of Pendragons with Cruxites, and I mean, you can even throw fireballs for 4 damage for 4 cards. Like that's not the worst thing in the world either against those decks.
Yeah.
At that point in the game, like it's just, you've got so much control at that point. You're good to go.
I think the big tenet that this deck relied on to get there is the thing I was saying earlier is when your opponent's playing aggro, your game plan is to attrition them out. They cannot continue to drop good allies for sure. Like sometimes they'll put some like weaponsmiths down or something, right? But like they will run out of Gildas. They will run out of even like lurking assailants and Windrider vanguards. All those, like they'll run out of the good things. It actually in a surprisingly short amount of time. I think to the point where you are, if all you do is just go, if I attrition you out, then my chances of winning the game go to like 80% at that point. If I can just get you out of your allies, and it's going to be very difficult for them to find the kill, especially when you have sudden steals floating in your deck.
Yes. Yeah. Sudden steal is just, I love that card. It's so insane.
Big damage.
Yep. It's very close to Tonerus, but not quite there.
So yeah, shout out to Michael Yapto. Incredible deck, incredible performance. And I love the comeback after his, so I mentioned earlier at Houston, he played me around 1 and beat the hell out of me. He was just like, he played a perfect Rye and just dominated me. But Rye is a feast or famine deck. He feasted on me around 1. And then I think later in the tournament, he just famined a few times and found his way out of the event. He brought a much more like all around, like effective, good old fire hybrid, always have the options available to you. And it was a great meta call and he performed super well.
Yeah. Excellent. Congrats to him for sure. But let's move on to this true champion list. Cause this has captured my heart maybe more than Fire Merlin. Scepter of Lumina is a heck of a card. And this looks a lot like their Wind Allies list. Except with Scepter of Lumina and Lorraine Spirit Ruler as well, which just provides a heck of a lot of burst damage to your opponent. Scepter potentially being 12 damage for one card out of the material deck is insane. It's going to put a lot of pressure on a lot of decks.
Yeah, this is really showcasing, like, this is what Scepter of Lumina, this is what Water needed to to keep up with anything. And this is what you want to do. Now the big thing here, like the innovation here that really makes this so clutch, is sort of like the line of logic where you get here. You start with True Champion Gaming's Wind Ally deck, and they go, okay, we're going to sit at Lorraine level 1. We're going to, every turn, what we're going to do is we're going to put out 1 or 2 allies, whatever. We're going to get ourselves to balance if we have Gildas in play. Hold back a few cards, because those few cards are going to be key cards: Deflecting Edge, Favorable Winds, Zephyr, Displace. Like just the only interaction cards they run. Everything else is just going to be dudes. Play some dudes, hold back that interaction, push damage. Stay at level 1, draw cards every time. So the interesting is you switch to Water, and that right there is the line that a lot of people were playing and seeing some success with. You just, okay, well, we're just going to do the Water version, because what do we gain there? We gain the ability to Frostbind. We gain the ability to Fracturize, especially against Erupting Rhapsody decks or things like that. They can go, or Rending Flames. Nullifying Fracturize layering means that it's a Nullifying Lantern that is unassailable by fire. And that's good. But now we put in Scepter of Lumina, you go, okay, well, if we level to 3 instead, we have a line where we can just go, if all I do is I pitch 2 cards, or I pitch I get rid of some floating memory, suddenly boom, 4 damage to your face. Turn on my Banner Knights that way. That's nice. Level to 3, do it again. This is where I think it's so clever. Then they go, okay, well, what do we do at level 3? Well, Ghost of Pendragon. Like, that's a pretty easy inclusion, because it is a 2 reserve 3/4 that draws you 2 cards. It's like the most absurdly statted card in the game, I think.
Yes, it's bonkers. It's wild that Crux has a weapon like this. I mean, it's not fair to say, because like Terra's got some cool weapons too. Like Crawl he's a beast, but he's just not anywhere near as easy to play as Ghost of Pendragon.
Yeah. But then I love the final piece of spice that I adore in here is 2 copies of Spirit Blade Dispersion. This card, I think, has seen almost 0 tournament play up to this point. I'm sure there's some like early tournaments where people were like maybe like toying around with it a little bit. It was in the Prelude starters, and so like I'm sure it ended up in some decks. But since Houston, for sure, I mean, no dispersions. But then what a clever thought to go, you know what? Once we get to level 3, they've probably taken like 8 to 12 damage from Scepter of Lumina already. We've attacked them a few times. We just need to finish them. And Spirit Ruler puts out a 4 durability weapon, and you just go, okay, 0 cost, fast speed spell that does 4 damage.
Yes.
That's sick.
Yep. Yes.
Oh man, I love it.
That's potentially 16 damage off of like just leveling up. Like you're not even playing cards or anything like that. All you're doing is like progressing the game and dealing damage to your opponent.
Yep. And in place of things like Displace and Zephyr and Favorable Winds, we get to run again. We get, Frostbind, Frostbind and Fracturize. And they also ran 4 copies main of Song of Frost, which is like, I wonder how many games they just stole with that card. The opponent's playing any aggressive fire deck, and they go Rending Flames. They go, yeah, okay,
whatever.
No attack anymore. It's gone.
Yep.
Like
solid Lorraine level 2 flame sweep there.
Yeah. I mean, like, actually, I haven't gotten a chance to really sit down and like watch through any of the gameplay, but like, I'm actually even more impressed that, and maybe it's a testament to his skill or something, or just some bad luck on the team of the True Champion Gaming side. But I'm impressed that Yap won, because that flame sweep getting negated by Song of Frost should just like, they should probably basically win the game on the spot when that happens.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this looks like it has really good matchups into a lot of the Fire Merlin things going on right now. Another interesting thing is too, like, so True Champion brought this list. It looks like there's 3 other Water Lorraine lists throughout the top 32, one in top 8 as well that Ivan Dang played, that are like slightly different. I'm not sure if they like this team came to the same conclusion in parallel or anything like that, but there's some slight differences to it. They're also going to Lorraine level 3. They're not playing Ghost of Pendragon or Spicy Spirit Blade dispersions, but they've got some extra like anti-ally tech in there with Lunette and Snow Fairies and stuff. So like again, like this is a really flexible build. You can build it to attack a lot of different metagames, depending on what you're expecting.
The Lunette in particular it's like the water call if you expect to see a lot of wind ally decks. Wind allies can't do anything about Lunette. They just go, oh, okay. I'll just not do anything ever.
If you're on the play and you go turn 1 Lunette, balances up, I like they have to gill this, I think, into it. No, they don't have an answer at all. There's just nothing.
No,
like,
they're serious.
Done.
Like
they're done for the rest of the game. Like they have to hope that you mess up and get rid of balance so that they can get like sort out with Lorraine and attack it down with like a Sword of Seeking or something.
Zephyr and Displace will like allow them to put something in, but then they can't attack the Lunette with it.
Exactly.
And then the Lunette comes back and it's like especially and like I like this. Ivan's list here is pretty cool, actually. Like this is clearly a I am not going to lose to wind allies version of this list with 3 Lunettes main, 3 Seeking Shots main, which another great card against that deck just because it hits the damage threshold to kill all of the allies that matter. It has True Sight, so it kills Dream Fairy.
Yep.
Like anti-Dream Fairy, anti-allies. It runs Snow Fairy, which is just like only good against ally decks. And it's still running Woodland Squirrels, I think, just to deal with balance with Gildas to try and keep the Gildas online. In fact, I would say actually this list looks a lot like just the water version of of the Wind Ally deck. Just kind of like finding replacements card for card, but it's like it's good. It's got the key thing too is it's got the Dungeon Guide Scepter Illumina. I think that's a combo too that like you need to be aware of. Because it's one thing to get 4 damage on your opponent's materialized phase. You know that's coming. You're like, okay, they're going to level. They're going to deal 4 damage to me. But what happens when suddenly your clock is totally wrong because they then Dungeon Guide you that same turn? You take 4 more damage, and they put the sword into play. And then especially with True Champion Gaming's build, where then they also do 4 more damage with infusion or something like.
Just a ton of lines where you're going to do a ton of damage out of nowhere. I really like the squirrels in this other list though with Lunettes too, because like that's where you really want balance to be turned on. Like I think
true.
Like with True Champion, they weren't running Lunettes, just Gildas, and you really don't need squirrels. Like you get 1 or 2 hits in with a balanced Gildas, and that's more than enough in that deck. In this deck, you really want those squirrels to help you keep Lunette at a high health. Lunette's kind of like the ace and protector of the water allies versus the wind allies. Yeah,
I think that's very, very fair and very astute. And even I think it's at around the same numbers that Ace and Protector would get played in those builds too. So,
but yeah, I mean, just sweet lists here. Really kind of having a chokehold on ally decks there. Let's see.
Let's talk about this Win Rye deck.
Yes, it turns out Rise is still good. He's still powerful.
Rye again, it's like Rye's kind of feast or famine. It's just like if your deck comes together, then there's like little that some players can do. A lot of decks just go, okay, yeah, I lose. Like that's you got it. If things don't come together, you're struggling. But this Wind Rye, so we've actually in our locals we had a Wind Rye player for a long time. Who and Mike has just been busy with fatherhood stuff, so he's not been showing up to the locals tweaking this Wind Rye deck. But first thing I saw when I saw this list was like, this is remarkably similar to where he was like sort of directing everything towards. It's a good list. This is the list where it's like just a little more refined than what he was working with. And I can say from experience that it was frustratingly powerful when everything came together. I think this is a cool list, and I think it's really cool to I guess I'm interested in, I don't know if you have any insight on this, Taylor. I'm interested in where you think the wind version has the edge over the fire version in this meta.
Honestly, I like the wind version quite a bit, and maybe more than the fire version in this meta. It getting the 4 Beseech the Winds in addition to the 4 dungeon guides really lets you continue to kind of like hammer home high arcane counts, so that you can level up really, really quickly and make sure you're hitting your arcane spells and your level ups, and still potentially like have the time to draw enough cards to kill them after you get to level 3. Because that's kind of the issue with Fire Rye right now, is that they have to buy some time with Peaceful Reunions and Resolute Stands, so they can level to 3 like a little bit more slowly and keep cards in their hand. Whereas like Wind Rye is going to more consistently be at level 3 on like turn 2. You've got 4 Beseeches and 4 dungeon guides here, and once you're at level 3, like your Peer into Manas are insane.
And don't forget Displacing Dungeon Guide.
Yes.
That's the huge play. You all you have to do is see a single dungeon guide and a single displace, and you go, yeah, okay, I'm level 3 turn 2, like easy.
Yeah, it's very easy. Yep.
Which is like, that's very scary for you to do, because you go down to like 1 card in hand when you do that. Mm-hmm. But if that 1 card in hand is a Careful Study, you're fine. Like, yeah. Can your opponent get the kill on turn 2? They have to be like Erupting, who saw everything.
Yes.
Like everything perfect lined up, then maybe. But that's and that's only if they're, if they're able to get to level 3 on turn 2 and have spell shields up or something, which this deck did run 3 spell shield main. Then you're in a lot worse position. Your opponent's in a lot worse position. So yeah, it's a good list.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this one leans a lot on Advent of the Stormcaller, which I think is pretty huge. I think that's been pretty popular in Rye builds for a while now, I think. I'm not sure if it's seeing the same amount of play it was before Reckless Conversion was banned. But I mean, they use it super well in this win list, especially with the 3 Voltaic Spheres to help kind of get your level up and reduce the cost a bit more.
Yeah, Voltaic Sphere, actually, I think I underrated that card when I first saw it. It's definitely a strong linchpin card in getting these Rye decks to like hit. Rye's usually just like a number or 2 away from like, oh, you would be just dead if I had like 1 more banished card or something. And Voltaic Sphere happens to add 2 relevant numbers, and in a worst case scenario, it's a source of a few damage to the champion or something. I was surprised at the 1 Shock Therapy here too. Like, that was a card that I still have pegged as being one of the weaker cards in the set.
It's really good with Dungeon Guide, because when you level up with Dungeon Guide, how does this work? You're banishing it as part of resolving Dungeon Guide's effect. So by the time the Shock Therapy would see the trigger window for its class bonus, element bonus effect about putting an enlightened counter on your champion when it's banished from memory, you're already level 3 because the Dungeon Guide has resolved. So you actually get that extra enlightened counter from it too. So it's really, really good in these Wind Rye lists, I think, that are turboing up with Dungeon Guides.
I sort of remember hearing that, something to that effect now. That's when you level a Dungeon Guide, not when you level...
Correct.
Not when you level manually?
Yeah, so if you level in your material phase, or you level in your, like with Beseech the Wind, you've got to pay your costs to get your level 3 onto the stack. So you're going to banish your Shock Therapies while you're level 2. But because you're banishing them as part of the Dungeon Guide effect resolution, that they don't... You're level 3 when they're banished, because it's all happening in the same effect.
Oh, right. That is such a little minute detail, but that makes sense. And that again, like Rye just being about just getting that 1 last number you need to like find the kill. Shock Therapy, getting an extra enlightened counter can completely, I'm sure, give you that 1 level you needed with Power Overwhelming to get to the Advent of the Stormcaller level, to Advent for free. And then once you start adventing for free, then it's just then it's just over.
Yes. Yep. Or I mean, it's the extra card you need from Careful Study too. Like, normally you get to play only 1 Careful Study for 2 cards in a turn. If you've got the Shock Therapy counter as well, you get 2. So there I'm referencing like Rye's level 3 effect, or his inherited effect from level 2, to give you an enlightened counter on the first mage skill or spell that it's played each turn. So shock therapy then gets you an extra free one. So all your you just get a huge turn with careful studies and in addition to Advent as well.
Yeah, cool. I love this. I love this list. I think I think these numbers had to have been fairly carefully chosen.
Oh yeah.
I don't think you end up on a list with one shock therapy, one erratic bolt, and one peaceful reunion if you haven't been grinding this list.
Yep.
So huge shout out to Keelan, who just I mean this is an awesome list, and I think this is a deck actually that more people need to be playing right now. Because I think you will totally like sweep unprepared people. Everyone is just gearing up for ally matchups. And if you see like, especially if you like, you go up against this like Water Lorraine, Ivan's Water Lorraine is like Lunette, and you're like, I
guess my dungeon guide enters rested.
Oh no.
Right. Before we move on, kind of wrap up some final thoughts here on the metagame. And talk a little bit maybe about conversion or something. But the Fire, Ensoul, Lorraine list in the top 4 that Gaetano, I think is how you pronounce it.
That's how I would pronounce it.
I'm sorry if I butchered your name. But I mean, it's, everybody thought Resolute Stand was going to be the death of Ensoul. And that's clearly not the case. Still a very powerful card. They're not, first of all, they're just not always going to have Ensoul, or I keep saying Resolute Stand. They're not always going to have Resolute Stand to stop your Ensoul. So when that happens, like that's just hitting for, potentially like 16 damage or 17 damage or however much it is. I think that's is that with Banner Knight? I forget. I'm not doing the math correctly off the top of my head here, but it's a lot of damage at once.
There's actually no Banner Knights in this list.
Oh yeah. Yes. So it's less than like whatever the full amount is, but I mean, it's a lot of damage. Some Spirit's Blessings in here to continue to hit with things like the Warrior's Longsword, or the Fire Tongue, like just a lot of really cool stuff.
This list is, I mean, we haven't seen a list like this in a while. This is a unique list for a number of reasons. Not only is it obviously doing Ensoul combo. Ensoul combo is such a fun strategy because it completely flips how your material deck is built from normal. So Gaetano was unable to include any tech in the material deck whatsoever. It's actually just 7 swords, 4 champion levels, and a Grand Crusader's ring. Though he's got sideboard tech that he can bring in, Tithe, Lantern, and Viridian Protective Trinket, all probably solid role players in the right matchups. But also in the main, like I said, no Banner Knight whatsoever. But what he's doing, he's running Lorraine Crux Knight instead of the very common Spirit Ruler. And he's also got 3 Spirit's Blessing in the main board. So what it looks like the plan is you're going to get there, you're going to Ensoul, you're going to attack a million times. Will they have the Resolute? Sure. I mean, he's got 3 Flame Sweeps main. He's got 2 Rending Flames main. Like he's going to bait those stands out in the mid game already.
Yep.
Against a lot of decks. Like if he Flame Sweeps you, you're not going to stand that, but he's going to be able to hold ally decks off, toss the flames out. You're going to stand the flames. You're going to stand Rending Flames every time because it prevents 6 damage. And if you're not still holding back on one and that Ensoul doesn't kill you, then how many of these cards get banished? 1, 2, 3, 4 of the swords will get banished from that, from the attack, which will now make Lorraine's attacks +4 damage. So then at that point, he can potentially throw even like a Savage Slash is now doing 6 damage, and he can Savage Slash Spirit's Blessing, or he can just attack with a sword, Spirit's Blessing, attack with a sword. You don't need the attacks. He can then use I'm sorry, I'm putting this together live. My thought process live.
Yeah, exactly.
But he can use, he can then attack with the Warrior's Longsword for 6 damage, Spirit's Blessing, then attack with the Seer's Sword for 5 damage. No, for 6 damage again, because the Warrior's Longsword got banished. Like, yeah. I mean, like,
yes. That's where I got the 16 damage from earlier, is because Crux Knight. So you do like 10 damage or so with your swords, and then you get to do another like 5 or 6 with the Crux Knight follow up with one of the remaining swords.
Yeah. It's what I think this is great. This is because anytime you can take like if you sit down against someone and you're playing Lorraine, like Taylor, you're a competitive player, you sit down with someone, they go Fire Spirit, and you go, okay. And they go Lorraine. And you go, well, they're one of two things. They're either they're gonna be aggroing me, and you actually should know at that already by turn two if they're aggroing you or not, or they're Merlin. And at that point, okay, they're probably going long game. They're potentially erupting, but we're not sure. But having this rogue like Ensoul strategy, I think is so sick because are they going to hold the Resolute Stand against you? Not game one. Like they won't necessarily know that you pop their Ready Flames out. They go Resolute Stand. You go cool.
Got him.
Yeah, totally got him.
Yep.
Ensoul, you lose.
Very smart coming in with the main deck for Ux too. Hitting whatever potential like Veiling Breezes or Spell Shields or anything. Like
that's so interesting too, because that only affects fire cards. So that's only Flame Sweep and Rending Flames and Fire Tongue.
Yes.
Maybe. Does that count?
It does count. Yep. So if you're actually any sword attacks because your champion's a Fire Spirit.
Oh, yes. Okay, fair enough. Yes. So your champion is a fire source, damage dealt by fire element sources you control. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, that's still just a lot of unpreventable damage that's going to get thrown out there. You can still attack with the other swords, even though like the damage might get prevented. They're still going to lose durability counters, go to get banished and power up your Crux Knight. So just excellent, like kind of fail safe there, worst case scenario. So.
I like it.
Also, a ton of floating memory in here, which is, I mean, you need it in an Ensoul list. But I know there's been a lot of people that have just been hating on floating memory lately because of all the Merlins running around, even some of the like scavenging raccoons. Floating memory is still really good, still very powerful when you can get that into your graveyard profitably.
Floating memory is back. I'm going to say it right now on the podcast. Floating memory is back, baby.
I never thought it was gone, but
it's back. It's back with a vengeance.
It's back. Exactly.
After Ascent Houston, there was a period of time where, for several reasons, floating memory was being seen a lot less. There were metagames that were developing going into Houston that were just hugely Merlin dependent. And all those players getting in the same room and thinking, wow, Merlin's really good, are obviously just anytime any of them tried playing floating memory, the opponent just got it. They were like, okay, cool, banish it. And then they're like, oh, this sucks. And we were doing the same thing. We played a list that didn't use a lot of floating memory. And to be fair, when you're playing fire, you don't have to have floating memory because card draw suffices. For it does the same role as floating memory a lot of the time. But now I think we're in a metagame where Raccoon is like, people knee jerk to, right? There was definitely some groups that right now that were like 4 of Raccoon. And then now Raccoon is more like, 0 to 2, like Raccoons tend to be seen. Merlin is there sometimes. A lot of people are playing low to the ground ally decks. Like if you go after if you watch Houston and then you think, okay, the new metagame is low to the ground ally decks, like a Lorraine Wind allies, then floating memory is like open season for that. It's never going to get targeted by anything. It may be Raccoon sometimes, but sometimes it's like your Raccoon. If you have the Raccoon, you have the Raccoon.
Yep.
So yeah, I like this inclusion of this. Like Fast Cure is a card that is sometimes totally game altering. Insane floating memory card. A lot of surprising amount of honorable Vanguards in the top 8 in general.
Yes.
Vanguard's back, just being a body that you have to respect. Like if you just go like, well, I'm not going to kill that. Well, it gets you to damage thresholds. It gets you there.
Yes. Yeah. It's still, 1 damage a turn, which is that's not nothing.
Inspiring Call and Banner Knight certainly make it more than that too.
Oh yeah. Yes, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of the 6 spice. I mean, obviously Terry with True Champion also played like a Fire Merlin list. That's been got the Prismatic Edge and the Wind and Water cards main as well, that we've seen before, and that's still very powerful. Still doing a lot of really good things that you can pilot that at a high level and take events too. So
yeah, I feel like Terry taking the safe route. I'm experienced playing this. This list is good. This list has game against everything. I'm just going to, rely on my testing, my experience, and a solid fire deck with solid end game to get me there. And obviously it worked. It worked just great.
Yes. But yeah, my takeaway from this now is there's a lot of really viable decks. Not everything is viable, obviously. Your Xanders are still kind of confined to like fire allies. Sylvie is still nowhere to be seen yet. I think there's some room to play with both of those, especially with the Stone Scale Band and the upcoming Xander level 2. We don't talk about Korhazi's Insignia.
What was that? I literally forgot about that card.
Exactly. Yeah.
I literally forgot about it.
Exactly. So like,
oh my God,
there's room there. There's room. I think there's some spice to be had at some point potentially. I mean, these waterless show that, right? Like you, like all 6 water Lorraine decks that came in to date, or that came into Auckland made day 2. Like just insane conversion right there.
Yeah.
Like
absolutely nuts conversion.
There's room to come in and attack metagames here with unknown decks and be successful. So I think there's still some play there for Sir Sylvie and Xander. But really the big thing is that like you can bring a lot of different kind of flavors of Rye and Merlin and Lorraine and kind of attack the metagame how you want if you can find if you can read the room correctly.
The stat that I liked the most, I repeated the stat to you, when we were chatting about this a little bit ago, but that the stat that all of those water decks made it in top 32 is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But that half the water decks in the tournament made it into top 8.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And that half of the Wind Rye decks made it into top 8.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
There are 2.
Yes. No, there were 3 Wind Ryes.
Sorry. It's one third of
yes.
each, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
One third of each. One third of the water Lorraine decks made it into top 8, and 1/3 of the Wind Rye decks made it into top 8.
Yeah. Yep.
But that is a high conversion rate.
Yes.
And it indicates to me that those decks are being like potentially underplayed or underrepresented.
100%. Yeah. Like there's a lot of room to figure out what your deck does and master that and play it well and take down tournaments.
And I think as we go forward, so just to like project into the future a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
So Fractured Crown metagame is just going to be coming to a close here in a month. I think there's still a few store champs, still some regionals that are closing out the season.
I mean, this goes into January pretty well. Like there's still like a good month of Fractured Crown metagame before Alchemical Revolution releases.
But with the holiday season in between, I don't think there's anything scheduled like on Christmases or anything around.
No, I mean like next weekend, I think there's nothing. I forget if there's stuff that on like New Year's weekend.
Sure.
But I mean, you got this weekend still. You have the 2 weekends after New Year's. Like that's 3 weekends of events yet.
Yep. Should be a few more and certainly a good opportunity to, like try and read the meta a little bit. And I think there's some really good calls you can make, whether your call is what everybody's planning for these water decks now. So it's Erupting's time to shine. Like Erupting's not good against water, but if everyone's playing anti-water, then Erupting's probably pretty good. So, like those meta calls are what I think are a really fun component of TCGs. Once you really start to understand the metagame and you can like try and call the call instead of just like bringing the obvious good deck or bringing the answer to the obvious good deck.
Yes.
Or you can, if you expect, on my locals, there's one thing, like when we were going to store champs, I was teching for locals and everyone should tech. Like you shouldn't just look at the Ascent Auckland list and go, that's what I have to tech for.
Mm-hmm.
You need to look at the Ascent Auckland list and think, which of my locals are going to take these lists, right?
Yes.
How many of these people are going to start playing these ones? And then which ones are they going to play and which ones should I tech for? When you're talking about like store champs level tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And as we move into as we move into Alchemical Revolution, get my head on straight here. And we have the addition of the 3 new classes, and we have the Proxies Vault, hopefully bringing up Assassin a little bit. Tamer maybe he's got some playability. I think we're looking at a metagame where maybe I said this in the last episode too a little bit, but very much I think if there's a style of gameplay that you like, there should be viable, like competitive viable builds in that style, whether they're found or not. And I agree. I think there's still some unexplored stuff. Like I'm not confident it's Sylvie. I want it to be really badly, but I'm not confident. But I think there's unexplored decks in general. And I think whether you want to brew it or just, find whatever's working for people, I think if you have a champion you like to play and a style you like to play, and there's going to be a huge variety now with Alchemical Revolution, that's going to be something that you can do. And that's going to open up, like when we do our recap of Ascent Ontario, it's going to be crazy.
Forward to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could easily see 8 different decks in top 8. Depending on just how people shake out. It might be like 5 different decks in top 8 with True Champion Gaming playing 3 of the same.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what happened in Auckland,
6
right?
different decks or something. Yeah. So do my math wrong. 6 different decks. True Champions playing the same one 3 times. But yeah, we'll see. It's, I mean, and then you got hybrid builds, and then we didn't even get to talk about the dual element champions.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yep.
Last episode
those dropped. Yep.
Those dropped right after we recorded, and it's like, there's, oh my goodness.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, 2 of them especially just look like there's potentially a lot of really fun things you can do with them. The Cleric Vanitas has got wild like wind shenanigans with his weird level 1 and 2. Nico just had like a weapon previewed that was last night on the festive stream. That is like potentially going to be very strong in her builds, or potentially just Guardian builds in general. Like it's, if people thought Houston was going to be the Wild West, which I don't think they actually did, because there was a lot of expectation of Fire Merlin.
Yeah.
But if they did, Oakland is just going to be that, but like to the next power.
Ontario.
Yes, Ontario.
Yes.
It's all California.
Yeah. It's close enough. And like straight builds, like straight cleric builds, hybrid builds, dual element builds. And then like after you get through all those levels, then you have, okay, maybe you settled on Fire Warrior. Okay, well, are you doing Ensoul? Or are you doing level 1 aggro? Are you doing, I don't know, it's like a Merlin type build, but with Lorraine? I think there's just a lot of Infusion still is probably playable. Like
I've been trying to brew up some Infusion lists here. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to be had there for sure.
I think the thought that came to my mind after finishing that stream yesterday, after thinking about all this metagame breakdown for the podcast, everything is like, I said this to you guys last night in our like group chat, but I feel bad for everybody who's not playing Grand Archive right now.
No kidding.
This is in my opinion one of the most exciting trading card games out there, who is like with set 3, I think really coming into its own, but has vibrant, interesting metagames right now with a huge variety of playable decks, huge variety of available skill expression oriented play, where you can, I think you can be one of the best erupting players. I think you can be one of the best Rye players, and you can just find your niche and hone in on it. And I think with the last banning Avarice, banning Reckless Conversion, the game is at the perfect, like the perfect strength level of its sort of like end game threat cards. It like those 2 cards were going about a turn too fast, and the game is now right there. I think it's right where it needs to be, where like aggressive decks work, level 3 decks work, everything in between. There's control versions, there's ally versions, there's like all-in combo decks. There's just like, it's all there, and it's about to just get absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the one thing like the metagame was kind of missing before those bannings, was that you hit to level 3 and the game ends, and that's it. Like it was done that turn essentially. So it didn't matter what your flavor of level 3 was. Like, it didn't matter if you were playing Crux or Arcane, or if you were playing Ensoul or Infusion. Like, the game was just over. You didn't have there was no time to actually play it a turn after that. Now you're spending like 2, maybe 3 turns on level 3 in each game, potentially if your deck's going to level 3. So like, there's just a lot more room to kind of like play around with these advanced elements and see a greater diversity of what's going on there, besides just kind of like the low to the ground ally decks we were seeing before, where we kind of there were some nuances there. Now we're seeing those nuances display in level 3 as well.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy with the balance of the game right now. I think it's excellent. I'm literally like in the process of just grabbing a bunch of extra Magic cards, bringing them to our locals so I can get some more Grand Archive stuff in my hands, because it's just so everything's so exciting. Everything's so exciting and so fun, and I'm so happy to be here along for the ride. And I'm so happy that we have a locals of people who are just as excited as me about things. So. And right now, Weebs is already they're working on their plans to upgrade their ambassador program, reach out to more stores, get more demo events running for people. It's a bright future and exciting metagame for Grand Archive right now.
Yeah, 100%. I'm extremely happy to be here right now. And with that, I think that's been the Recollection Step. So thanks everybody for watching and listening. But I think that'll be about it for the night. Later.